You've probably heard the phrase, Jesus is the Prince of Peace, right? But what if I told you there's a passage in the Bible where Jesus himself says, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword? Mind-blowing, isn't it? Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial, often misunderstood passages in the Bible, Matthew chapter 10, verses 34 through 37, where Jesus talks about bringing division, not peace. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. It's a game changer. All right, let's get into it. So before we dive into interpretations and what scholars have to say, let's look at the text itself. Matthew chapter 10, verses 34 through 37 says, Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Pretty intense, right? Now let's talk context. This passage is part of what's known as the missionary discourse in the Gospel of Matthew. Here, Jesus is sending out the 12 disciples to preach and heal. He's giving them a sort of mission briefing, outlining what they can expect as they go out into the world to spread his teachings. He warns them of the challenges and persecutions they'll face, the difficult choices they'll have to make, and yes, the division that may arise even within their own families. So this isn't a standalone shocker. It's part of a bigger picture where Jesus is preparing his followers for the reality of their mission. All right, so now that we know what the text says and the immediate context, let's hop in a time machine and travel back to the first century Jewish world. Picture this: tight-knit communities, religious festivals, Sabbath observances, and family units that are the backbone of society. Family isn't just important, it's the linchpin that holds everything together. In this context, your family is your social safety net, your identity, and your spiritual lineage. Now enter Jesus, who starts talking about causing divisions within this most sacred institution, the family. To say this was radical is an understatement. It was borderline revolutionary. It's like someone walking into your annual family reunion and saying, hey, following me might mean you'll have to stand against your loved ones. Definitely not the kind of message that would have been met with applause. Scholar John Stott puts it this way, discussing the cost of discipleship and how Jesus didn't promise a comfortable or conflict-free life. He says Jesus is speaking about the division that occurs naturally from choosing righteousness over familial norms. In a world where family was your identity, Jesus was asking his followers to place their identity first and foremost in him. So, when you read that Jesus came to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, you've got to understand how groundbreaking, how earth-shattering this concept was for a first-century Jew to hear. Jesus was literally redefining what it meant to be part of a family, and more broadly, part of a community. Now let's talk about swords. No, not the kind you see in epic fantasy movies, but the metaphorical sword Jesus mentions. It's easy to think, whoa, Jesus is talking about weapons here? But hold your horses, it's not a call to arms. The sword in this context is a powerful metaphor, symbolizing division and conflict. The idea of the sword is often used throughout biblical literature to denote separation or to make a pointed statement. For example, the Word of God is described as sharper than any two-edged sword, in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12, emphasizing its ability to penetrate and discern the thoughts and intentions of the heart. Similarly, in this passage, the sword represents the kind of division that following Jesus may bring into your life, even within your family. It's a separator, but not in the way a physical sword separates flesh. It separates people based on their choices, beliefs, and allegiances. Theologian N.T. Wright talks about how Jesus' message was revolutionary and upended not just religious, but also social and familial structures. Wright explains that the tension often exists when one seeks to faithfully follow Jesus. In his view, the sword is emblematic of this tension, the kind of tension that reveals where our true loyalties lie. So when Jesus says, I did not come to bring peace but a sword, what he's really saying is that the message of the gospel is so transformative, so radical, that it's going to cause divisions. And these divisions can run deep, affecting even the most intimate relationships in our lives. All right, so we've talked about swords and the societal backdrop of first-century Judaism. Now let's dig into the notion of a household divided. Jesus says that following him might turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and so on. But wait, there's more. This idea isn't entirely new, it has roots in the Old Testament. Micah chapter 7 verse 6 states, For a son dishonors his father, a daughter rises up against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are the members of his own household. Sounds familiar, right? Jesus is tapping into a well-known prophetic tradition that warns of the societal and familial upheaval that can accompany the quest for justice and righteousness. Essentially, when you stand for something that goes against the grain, expect resistance, even from those closest to you. Now, what does this mean for us today? It's a stark reminder that the path of discipleship isn't always a walk in the park. The choice to follow Jesus can sometimes be a choice that others in your family may not understand or support. Remember, this isn't about creating division for the sake of division. It's about the natural tension that arises when you decide to follow a path of righteousness and godliness. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in his book The Cost of Discipleship, talks about how Jesus' teachings are a reminder of the extreme commitment he demands from his followers. Bonhoeffer views this passage as emblematic of the cost associated with that commitment. According to him, when you choose to follow Jesus, you're signing up for the potential of familial discord because you're putting God's will above everything else, including family ties. So in summary, the notion of a household divided isn't just a New Testament phenomenon. It's an enduring biblical theme that serves to remind us of the difficult yet rewarding path of discipleship. Moving on, let's delve into a phrase that probably caught your eye: being worthy of Jesus. The passage closes with a strong statement. Jesus says, "Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." This is what scholars often refer to as the cost of discipleship. So what does it mean to be worthy of Jesus? In this context, it means that your allegiance to Christ should take precedence over all other relationships, even familial ones. That's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? But let's be clear, it's not about not loving your family. It's about the hierarchy of your loyalties and affections. St. Augustine explored the idea of rightly ordered loves, suggesting that our love for God should be paramount, and all other loves should flow from that. In essence, loving God wholly enables us to love others better. If your ultimate allegiance is to Christ, it changes how you interact with everyone else, including your family. William Lane Craig often talks about the rational basis for Christian belief and the exclusivity of Christ. He notes that this exclusivity can be a point of contention both within and outside of the family structure. So when Jesus says you have to love him more than your family to be worthy, it's not a call to alienation, but a call to a higher allegiance that can, paradoxically, make all other relationships richer and more meaningful. Theologian Dallas Willard also speaks to this when he talks about the transformative nature of discipleship. Following Jesus changes us, and that change can sometimes be a source of tension or conflict within families. But it's a transformation that leads to eternal life, making the earthly cost pale in comparison. So when Jesus talks about being worthy of him, it's a reminder that the journey of faith is one that demands our full commitment, a commitment that supersedes all else. It's a call to put Christ first, and in doing so, discover the profound impact it has on every aspect of our lives. Now let's tackle the elephant in the room: the seeming contradiction between Jesus as the Prince of Peace and this message of division and discord. How can the same person who said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God," also say that he came to bring a sword and division? First off, let's understand that the term Prince of Peace and the notion of Jesus as a peacemaker doesn't mean the absence of conflict at all costs. The biblical concept of peace, or shalom, is much richer than just a lack of strife. It involves complete well-being, reconciliation, and the flourishing of creation. So when Jesus talks about bringing peace, it's not a superficial, feel-good kind of peace. It's a peace that takes into account the full scope of human existence and our relationship with God. R.C. Sproul once noted that Jesus indeed came to bring peace, but it's a peace between God and humanity through the atonement of sins. The division in earthly relationships is not the intended outcome, but rather a byproduct of the radical call to align one's life wholly with God's will. Another scholar, J.I. Packer, also offers an interesting angle. He talks about how Jesus' message is designed to bring ultimate peace through transformation and salvation, but recognizes that the process might involve intermediate conflict. According to him, the tension is not a contradiction, but rather a sequence. Division now, ultimate peace later. C.S. Lewis also touched on this topic, stating that Christianity doesn't offer the kind of peace that allows us to evade the harsh realities of life. Instead, it offers a peace that enables us to face these realities with a new kind of courage. Following Christ can be disruptive, but it's the kind of disruption that leads to a deeper, eternal peace. So, while it may initially seem like a contradiction, the perspectives of peace and division in the teachings of Jesus are two sides of the same coin. The message of division serves to reveal who is genuinely aligned with this deeper, truer sense of peace that Jesus offers. It's not a contradiction, but a complex, nuanced portrait of what it means to follow Christ. Finally, let's bring this ancient text into our modern world. How does a message about division and swords speak to 21st century Christians? In a world so interconnected yet divided, with the social fabric sometimes tearing at the seams, this passage is incredibly relevant. You might be a young adult whose newfound faith ruffles the feathers of your more secular family. Perhaps you felt tension when discussing moral or ethical standards with friends who don't share your beliefs. Maybe you're part of a church that's faced division over doctrinal issues or cultural engagement. The point is, choosing to live a life that's committed to Christ can often put you at odds with those around you. Anecdotal evidence isn't hard to find. There are numerous accounts of individuals whose choice to convert led to estrangement from their families. Others find that their faith commitments, like going on missions or engaging in certain kinds of ministry, are met with skepticism or concern from loved ones who don't share their religious convictions. Timothy Keller, a prominent Christian apologist and pastor, talks about how living a life true to the gospel will be countercultural. He states that if your life aligns too comfortably with the prevailing culture, you might need to question whether you're serving God or just going along with societal norms. John Piper also has something to say about this. He often speaks about Christian hedonism, the idea that our greatest joy is found in God. Sometimes pursuing this joy in God above all else can appear foolish or extreme to those who don't understand it. And yes, that might include members of our own families or social circles. In essence, this passage serves as a reminder that the journey of faith is not a solo endeavor, but one that occurs within a web of relationships. And within that web, tension can arise when you make choices that prioritize your faith over social or familial expectations. The sword that Jesus speaks of still cuts today, challenging us to consider what we're willing to give up, or whom we're willing to face conflict with in order to faithfully follow him. So yes, while following Christ promises ultimate peace and fulfillment, it's not a path devoid of challenges or conflict. But as many can attest, the cost is worth it, for the reward is an unshakable, everlasting peace that the world can neither give nor take away. As we wrap up our discussion on this intriguing and challenging passage, it's crucial to emphasize the importance of a balanced interpretation. While the text speaks of swords, division, and familial strife, it's not an endorsement of these things. Rather, it serves as a cautionary note about the possible consequences of a committed faith journey. Jesus isn't telling us to create division intentionally or to disregard the value of family and community. In fact, the Bible is replete with teachings on the importance of familial bonds and loving one's neighbor. What Jesus is highlighting is the unavoidable tension that can arise when we make him the ultimate priority in our lives. This is not a call to fanatical devotion that ignores all other responsibilities and relationships. Instead, it's an invitation to place God at the center of our lives, from which all other relationships and responsibilities radiate. In other words, love for God doesn't negate love for family. It should ideally enrich it, giving it a depth and permanence that are not possible otherwise. Renowned theologian Karl Barth put it succinctly when he said that to clasp one's hands in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of the world. True faith is revolutionary, not because it seeks to divide, but because it seeks a higher order, a kingdom where God reigns supreme. But revolutions, even spiritual ones, rarely come without cost. To sum it up, Matthew chapter 10 verses 34 through 37 is a reminder that our allegiance to Christ might shake things up a bit, maybe even cause a few earthquakes in our relational worlds. But it's not a mandate for division, it's a warning, a preparatory note, letting us know what we might expect when we walk down the narrow path of discipleship. Because at the end of that path, beyond the swords and divisions, lies a peace that passes all understanding, available to all who are willing to be worthy of it. I hope this exploration has been as enriching for you as it has been for me. If you found this video insightful and you'd like to delve into more topics like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us continue these deep dives into the fascinating world of biblical teachings. Thank you for watching, and may your faith journey be enriched and inspired.